Hello and welcome to Mississippi Insight. I'm Melanie Christopher in this week for Byron Brown. Now this week we're taking a look at the election fight between Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann and Republican challenger Chris McDaniel. Neither man showed any love lost in their speeches at the Neshoba County Fair last month. We'll play excerpts from those speeches and we'll get expert analysis from Republican strategist Austin Barber. That's all ahead this Sunday on Mississippi Insight. We are just 2 days away from Republican and Democratic primary elections across the state, and it's possible that Tuesday's voting will determine who will serve as lieutenant governor for the next 4 years. Incumbent Delbert Hosemann faces two Republican challengers, Tiffany Longinot and State Senator Chris McDaniel. It is McDaniel who appears to pose the strongest challenge to Hosemann, and both men take aim at each other last month while stumping at the Neshoba County Fair. Let's listen to some of what they had to say.
Lieutenant Governor. Lieutenant Governor.
That concludes this morning's edition of Political Speaking.
Can we do a debate today? Would it be okay if we did a debate today?
Hang around. It's going to be a great
Can we do a debate today, please?
Enjoy.
Let the people hear your positions. Let's debate today. Fair game to talk about his adherence to Democrat principles. It's fair game to recognize that he has more in common with people like Mitt Romney than he does Ronald Reagan, and that's a problem. Now, how do we know this? Since he's been LG, I served with only 16 Democrats. For some reason, he appointed 13 of those Democrats to powerful chairmanships.
There are 45 committees in the Mississippi Senate. They've been talking about appointing. I only had 36 Republicans. Send me more Republicans. So we had to appoint some people to committees. We ran out of Republicans. We had to appoint some people to committees like the federal commerce and libraries and housing. Y'all ever heard any bills coming out of there? I don't think so.
You can yell, you can scream, you can use your friends in the media to cover up for you. It's a verifiable fact that from 1976 to 1990, he was the vice president of an abortion clinic.
In like 1976 or 78, I can't even remember, it's 50 years ago, I represented them in some tax matters. In 1981, I quit representing them. You look at this, there's no discussion about the issues, the real issues.
You can tell these two Republicans are bitter rivals. And Friday, we learned about a new complication for McDaniel. Attorney General Lynn Fitch has announced that her office has opened a criminal probe of a political action committee that is helping McDaniel's campaign. The Invest in Mississippi PAC has received hundreds of thousands of dollars from several groups accused of being dark money super PACs. The AG's office is investigating potential criminal violations under the Mississippi Election Code, as well as other statutes, after a complaint was filed on Wednesday. Senator McDaniel himself was not mentioned in Friday's announcement. Can McDaniel overcome the funding controversies and give Hosemann a real run for his money come Tuesday? Austin Barber and Richard Lake are next on Mississippi Insight. Senator McDaniel and Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann have been trading blows in what is shaping up to be a close contest come Tuesday. 12 News senior political correspondent Richard Lake spoke with Republican strategist Austin Barber to get his takes on the race.
So there's no question the lieutenant governor's race is the race to watch on August 8th on primary election day next Tuesday. It's been the race that everybody's been talking about. The most money's been spent on it. The most barbs have been thrown. It's certainly the race to watch, and it's coming down to the wire as we approach primary election day.
Yeah. Let's talk about that money. From what we've seen spent so far, does that match up with previous years' lieutenant governors?
No. I mean, look, we're on a course to spend $7 or $8 million. Everybody all in, because you've got the candidates themselves, you've got PACs that support the candidates themselves. I think it's a $7.5 to $8 million, probably not more than $8 million spent. That's a tremendous amount of money for a lieutenant governor's race in Mississippi. Good for the TV stations, though. Yeah, look, the LG control, the lieutenant governor controls the state senate. It is a tremendously powerful position that our state's constitution set up. many have always argued that the lieutenant governor had more power than the governor. That's typically dependent upon who the LG was and who the governor was. But yeah, they control the Senate. They control every piece of legislation that comes out of that chamber, committee chairman, and so on and so forth. So yes, there's a lot of money. There's a lot of attention being focused on this race, and mostly because it's two well-known politicians who are running for that. If you didn't have two well-known politicians, two who have run for office a number of times, you certainly wouldn't have this much money being spent.
Yeah, so let's get into the strategies now. Let's start with Senator Chris McDaniel. What do you make of his core strategy of painting Delbert Hosemann as not a bona fide Republican and calling him actually Delbert the Democrat?
Yeah, this race has always been run sort of one simple way by both campaigns, okay? And simple's maybe not a fair way to say it, but that's how I look at it. Hosemann has run a campaign saying, I deliver, these are the results that I deliver on, tax cuts, teacher pay, roads paved, I got to say that again because I couldn't get bread and butter. This campaign has always been run with sort of a simple formula for each campaign. Delbert Hosemann has said, listen, I get things done, okay? I'm getting roads paved. We are raising teacher pay. We are cutting taxes. We are doing things that matter to voters. Bread and butter issues that Delbert Hosemann is focused on. While Chris McDaniel has said, listen, I'm the conservative in this race. He's run a race. He's talked about trying to get to the right of Delbert Hosemann. He's focused on these larger issues. So it'll be very interesting to see where do voters fall when it comes down to Election Day.
Yeah. A question that McDaniel got at Neshoba was, are these repeated attacks and his rather what someone characterizes right-wing beliefs, far-right beliefs, alienate some voters?
Campaigns have to make decisions about what they put on television. Television ads are what typically drives message in campaigns to the greater number of people. So there's always a risk. There's always a fine line that a campaign has to try to divide or get as close up as they can without going over it in terms of alienating voters, in terms of turning off voters, going too negative, making people go, ugh, I don't feel comfortable with that, or I don't believe that. And this race, you've seen some things where people go, I'm not so sure that whether I believe that or not. And but that is an issue that every campaign who's spending serious money in modern campaign politics always has to deal with.
Mm-hmm. On a broader sense, do you think that there's an appetite for the strategies that Chris McDaniel has been implementing?
Chris is a tremendous speaker. He's a very talented politician. There's always been an appetite for what he has to say with the conservative base in Mississippi. In the past, it's not been a coalition large enough to get him across the finish line in first place. And obviously, he's putting all his chips in this race that he thinks that it will be. Where on the other hand, you've got Delbert Hosemann, who is also a very talented, very smart man with a long track record, in the business community for decades. And then when he first ran for Secretary of State, got elected, and obviously now 4 years as Lieutenant Governor, of a record of getting things done. So these are two contrasting styles that are coming against each other, and we'll see what ends up happening, obviously, on Election Day next Tuesday.
And those contrasting styles are so fascinating to me, just because we have Lieutenant Governor Hosemann, who seems to be more calm, I guess is the word. He's a little bit more reserved, and I guess what some would say moderate, as compared to Senator McDaniel. When it comes on Election Day, in the past, when we've seen Senator McDaniel, like you said, it's never gotten him over that 50% mark. Why this race, do you think? Why do you think he's pulled all his chips to go after one of the most well-known politicians?
Delbert Hosemann is when you look at polling data, Delbert Hosemann has always been consistently pretty well liked by Republican primary voters. But I think Senator McDaniel looked at sort of the national tide in Republican politics, sort of this insider versus outsider, even though he's been in the legislature for a long time, but sort of thought that he could go take advantage of that, and maybe this was his time to run. Will there be enough of that in Mississippi to get him across the finish line? I don't know. He's certainly the underdog in this race. He's been outspent. probably 5-1, and didn't have as much name ID probably as or favorable name ID as Hoseman had, but he felt like it was worth the risk for him, I assume, to take on this challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you believe that this is Lieutenant Governor Hoseman's race to lose?
I do. I do think this is Delbert Hoseman's race to lose. McDaniel has a tremendous base of voters who will go vote for him if it's raining fire outside. They're going to go to the polls and vote for him. So Hoseman's got to have a big turnout, okay? McDaniel's got his base of voters, as I just said, that are going to go vote for him. So this is, and I hate this because everybody always says, oh, it's about turnout. Well, this one really is about turnout, okay? A bigger turnout, a larger turnout is very good for Delbert Hoseman. Traditionally, if you look at the last 3 elections in Mississippi, 2011 we had 289,000 people who voted in the Republican primary. 2015 we had 277,000, and then in 19 we had 383,000. If Delbert Hoseman gets a 383,000 number of turnout, that is very good. Anything above 320,000 is good for Hoseman. Anything below 320,000 is good for McDaniel. So you need to look at turnout numbers and compare them to 11, 15, and 19 on election night. So listen, on election night, it is super important to look after these areas. On election night, the places to watch for McDaniel, the Pine Belt. That's his area that he's going to do well in, and he needs to run the turnout as much as he possibly can up in that area. He's traditionally done well in DeSoto County. He beat Thad Cochran in DeSoto County. Watch DeSoto County. That's really going to matter. For Hoseman, it's Central Mississippi. It's the Jackson DMA, the Jackson market. So Hines, Rankin, Madison, Warren, Yazoo, these counties, Simpson County. Look and see how those do for Hoseman. But I think the coast is really the swing area. You could potentially say Northeast Mississippi, but I really believe the coast is Harrison, Hancock, and Jackson County. And there are big sheriff's race in Harrison County and Jackson County. So I think whoever wins Harrison, Hancock, and Jackson County is who's going to be Lieutenant Governor.
Hoseman's strategy has really been just kind of ignoring Chris McDaniel for as long as he can. He publicly responded to McDaniel's attacks once when he was at Neshoba. That was the first time we've kind of seen him throw another punch back. Why not respond if you're Delbert Hoseman?
Delbert Hoseman is not a confrontational individual. Okay? It's just not who he is. He's a lawyer. He's much more kind of an old school statesman. That's not who he is. He has decided, watching this from afar, to sort of take a position of he's going to try to ignore the attacks, respond to them on television, or respond to them at the Neshoba County Fair as he did when he feels that they're necessary. But he's not a combative individual. He's much more a thinker, methodical guy who gets things done. Is sort of his take on who he is as an individual, and I think that is who he is. After watching Delbert Hoseman for a number of years,
when he does attack, he goes after McDaniel's record, and as we've seen, he goes after alleged campaign finance violations. How much of a role do you think that will play, or has played, and coming on Tuesday?
I don't think voters really care about. There are issues that voters really care about. They care about whether they can trust someone, whether they think someone is getting things done, whether they think someone is conservative or not. These big 100,000-foot issues that are just sort of gut issues with voters, those really matter. I just think most voters don't understand campaign finance laws and don't really care. If they saw somebody in handcuffs, that's one thing, but sort of this he said, she said, I don't think really matters in terms of campaign finance issues with voters.
You mentioned gut issues. I think that's a good term. Can you tell us what those kind of gut issues are?
Yeah, gut issues are you getting things done for me? Are you getting things done? I mean, look, a lot of our kids in Mississippi go to public schools. Okay, we have some really good public schools in our state. We have some public schools that really struggle. So you've got parents and teachers who go, what is your record on public schools? We all ride around on roads. What is your record on infrastructure? That matters, okay? Health care. And then, conservative issues. Where are you on abortion? Where are you on Medicaid expansion? Where are you on these issues that really matter, particularly on abortion and protecting the Second Amendment and standing with law enforcement? Because look, for those of us who live in and around Jackson, I mean, crime is a big issue, and so your record on that, as lieutenant governor or as a state senator, those matter to voters. Those are the ones that I think are gut issues where people will pay attention and it will really impact them when they go into the polling booth.
Absolutely. We've seen a lot of state senators make their stance known on this race. Even some senators appearing in ads for both of the candidates. To you, why has this race made their own colleagues, pick a side so intensely?
Well, because the lieutenant governor controls the state senate. These state senators are going to have to work with the lieutenant governor. Either they'll continue to work with Delbert Hosemann, or they'll work with the new lieutenant governor in Chris McDaniel. And so it matters to them. It is very personal to them. Everything the lieutenant governor does impacts them on a daily basis in their role as a state senator. That's why that's why a number of them have been so involved personally in this race.
What do you make of the more national endorsements? Obviously, Senator McDaniel got the endorsement of Ted Cruz, while Delbert Hosemann got Roger Wicker and Cindy Hyde-Smith. How big of a role do those play? I
don't think endorsements really matter. I just don't. I mean, if you got an endorsement from Donald Trump, or if you're a Democrat, you got an endorsement from the president. Otherwise, I really don't think endorsements matter. I always think endorsements matter at the local level. If it is an individual who really, I've always thought local endorsements matter. If you had a mayor who's super popular in a town that people are constantly working with and know, if you got a teacher or a coach or just somebody who people genuinely know, nobody in Mississippi knows who Ted Cruz is. I don't think that matters. I just don't think it really matters. I mean, it shows that McDaniel is continuing to try to build momentum and work hard, and maybe it helps him raise a little money. But I don't think Ted Cruz really moves anybody, who was maybe in the middle, or maybe who was, leaning Hosemann over to McDaniel.
Absolutely. McDaniel has been trying, and even at Neshoba, tried to get Lieutenant Governor Hosemann to debate him on the fairgrounds right there. Impact of no debate between these two.
When you're the challenger in a race, you always want to do anything you can. When you have less money, McDaniel's the challenger, McDaniel has less money. He wants to find opportunities, to get a chance to have more people see him stand beside Delbert Hosemann, whether it's in a debate or whatever the situation is. So that's a very typical tactic for a challenger with less money to do. In this race, I don't think it really matters, because ultimately, I think most people know who Chris McDaniel is, and most voters know who Delbert Hosemann is. Were they really going to learn anything in a debate in this race? Probably not. Both of them have a long history over the last 10, 12, 14 years of running for office in Mississippi at a very serious level. So I'm not so sure having a debate or not having a debate in this race will matter on election night.
Has anything else stuck out to you, just as strategy-wise, by these two candidates that surprised you or anything like that?
Nothing has surprised me in this race. Everyone who sort of understands politics in Mississippi knew this is where it was going to get. It was going to get heated. It was going to get a little ugly, and that's where we are. But again, it is who can get their people out to vote. McDaniel has this built-in base of voters. Delbert certainly does as well. The more people that go to vote, the better it is for Delbert Hosemann. The less people that go to vote, the better it is for Chris McDaniel. So it is a turnout race. And I tell you, we don't have much data in Mississippi leading up to an election. A lot of other states have early voting. We do not. We have absentee ballots. And the good news in this race, if you're Delbert Hosemann, is the most recent information from the Secretary of State's office, 96% of Republican primary voters, the Republican primary voters are all that matter. Democrats don't in this particular race. 96% of the people who cast an absentee ballot 4 years ago, where 383,000 people voted, have cast an absentee ballot for 2023. That is saying it's going to be a big turnout. That's good for Hoseman. We'll see if that actually holds. It's the only data that we have to try to predict turnout. Predicting turnout in Mississippi is very difficult to do. And anybody who tells you they know how to do it, they're lying.
Big thanks to Austin Barber and Richard Lake for their insights. Don't forget to watch 12 News Tuesday evening for election results from across the state. I'm Melanie Christopher. From all of us here at 12 News, make it a great weekend.